Well, Thomas Seyfried, thanks so much for being on here today with Patriots with Grit. You are a professor of biology at Boston College. You've been there for going on 4 decades. You have quite the history in the study of cancer. I've been seeing Randy, Dr. Seyfried's videos on Instagram for like the last 4 or 5 weeks, and the same guy, and I'm like, who is this guy? Because he seems to kind of somewhat know what he's talking about.
A little bit.
And he's on all these different shows that are much bigger than ours, by the way.
Right.
So Randy went on a bird dog hunt and started hunting you down and found you, Dr. Seyfried. And I just want to say thank you for joining us here today. We're going to talk about a topic that is so concerning, so near and dear to so many people. I think we've all been touched by people for sure in our families, and especially pets. I know I've had 5 dogs, 3 died with cancer. I've had family members that have been diagnosed and unfortunately passed away with cancer, as have you, Randy.
Yep.
So we wanted to bring someone on that is an expert in the field of cancer and the study of cancer, and we thought, what better person than to have you on? So thank you so much for being on here today.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
We wanted to, we were watching some of your documentation and some of your videos earlier, and there's so many things. It's such a deep topic. I think people want to just get right to it and say, how do you prevent it? How do you understand it? How do you treat it? But I think there's a lot more things that we need to have you discuss to lead up to those possible treatments, possible prevention. So we're just going to let you just kind of take this show and run with it, and just kind of pretend like we were two students in your classroom and educate us and our audience at the same time.
Well, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, when I do teach my class on cancer metabolism, the first thing I ask the students is, okay, what do you know about cancer? And the first thing that almost all the students in the class say is, oh, cancer is a genetic disease. And I said, where did you learn that from? And they said, well, all the textbooks tell us that. The professors in the department tell us that. Some of these kids, I heard it in high school. Now I heard it again in freshman biology and genetics. They always say cancer is a disease caused by gene mutations. And I say, well, this class will show you, in my class on cancer metabolism, cancer is a metabolic disease, I will show you the hard evidence that cannot be the case. And of course, the kids are bewildered, like, well, why would you have knowledge or evidence that's contradictory to what the entire world establishment thinks? What evidence do you have that we have never heard about? And then I go through information that brings them to understand, and we have to take it slowly because we need to show alternative evidence challenging the dogmatic view that it is a genetic disease. So if you say that cancer, well, if it's not a genetic disease, what are you saying it is? And I say it's a disease of mitochondrial energy metabolism. And of course, kids coming into the biology, they're mostly seniors in biology, they know exactly what mitochondrion is. It's the organelle inside the cytoplasm of the cell that generates the energy. So, like, for example, how would you best describe that? Well, we breathe. Why are we breathing? Every time I take a breath, every time you guys take a breath, we're bringing oxygen into our body. And we exhale, and what we exhale is vapor, water vapor, and CO2, carbon dioxide. And I said that carbon dioxide is coming from the breakdown of the foods that we ate, and the water is coming as the byproduct of energy metabolism. So we bring in oxygen, it combines with electrons to produce water inside the mitochondria, and the water is dissipated out of the mitochondria. And the CO2 is a gas. So we bring oxygen in and we release CO2 as a gas and we blow it out. So the waste products of efficient energy metabolism, the waste products are oxygen, CO2 and water. CO2 and water are the waste products of normal respiration. Now, if we were to have stop breathing, obviously, if you stop breathing long enough, you're going to die. And let's look at people who have acute heart attacks, for example. A person who would fall down with a cardiac arrest, if they're not attended to quickly, they will die. So they either get heart compression or electroshock or whatever they need to do to get that heart beating again. But if you were to look at the bloodstream of the person who had the heart attack, you would find very, very rapidly an increase of lactic acid and succinic acid. We'll say, well, what's going on with that? Okay, so our our oxygen that we bring into our body allows our brain and all of our organs to work very, very energetically efficient. You are listening to me, you're looking at me. All of these things are energy derived. If you were to have a heart attack, man, you black out, you fall down, you don't see anything. You don't feel anything as your head bounces off you don't feel pain, you just fall down. Because all of the energy, all of the systems in our body that require energy, all of a sudden are shut down. Now, you don't die instantly. Now, here's the interesting thing. You don't die instantly unless someone can come back and get your heart going. You're going to wake up and say, what the hell happened? I thought I was dead. I didn't know where I was, But in that short interim between the heart stopping and you falling down, the body immediately switches to an alternative form of energy, which is called energy without oxygen. And this is called fermentation. But it's very, very inefficient. And you have to have a lot of fuel around the body cells to replace the energy that's been lost from breathing oxygen. But that can happen for a short period, 5 minutes. If you don't get the oxygen back into your body in about 5 minutes, you're going to be deceased, depending on what kind of shape you're in when the event happens. So your body fills up with these acids, and these are the breakdown products of an alternative form of energy that we have in our bodies called fermentation energy without oxygen. Okay, so in order to keep your cells alive, you have to have an alternative source of energy when oxygen stops, and that's fermentation energy, but it's very inefficient and wasteful. And we have to have a lot of the fuel because oxidative phosphorylation is so highly efficient. We can do everything by just breathing oxygen and having a tiny amount of glucose to fuel this process in the presence of oxygen. But when oxygen stops, you better make sure you have a massive amount of glucose and a massive amount of another fuel called the amino acid glutamine to replace the efficiency of what we just lost.
If you want to learn how to implement the ketogenic diet and the Press Pulse protocol into your cancer management, just visit school.com/keto for cancer, the new community by our research analyst Johnny Rockermeyer. Within this new community platform, you can connect with other patients and learn from their experiences. You can also just search through the posts other members have already made. You will have access to our classroom section as well, which provides practical advice and tools for the best results. These sections cover all parts of the Press Pulse protocol that you should implement. Starting with the general scientific concepts by Dr. Thomas Seyfried, we will show you how to start the ketogenic diet, including which foods to choose and which to avoid. Additionally, we prepared a list of doctors specialized in metabolic therapy, as well as details about glutamine inhibition and hyperbaric oxygen protocols. So, take a look around at school.com/keto for cancer.
So, and that's why our bloodstream builds up with these waste products. And then as soon as you start breathing again and the heart comes back, the waste products disappear from the bloodstream. So, and I think people understand that this is what we see when we stop breathing. Now, you can also cyanide is people know cyanide is a poison. I think it was the Jones. Remember that cult thing?
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones.
Yes, Jim Jones. You drink the Kool-Aid. Remember they always say the concept, drink the Kool-Aid. You heard it, right? Okay. The Kool-Aid was laced with cyanide. Okay. So cyanide immediately shuts down oxidative phosphorylation. But unlike the heart attack, it doesn't. It binds it up and you're dead. You can't recover from a cyanide Most people can't recover quickly from a cyanide poisoning. That's why some people take cyanide to kill themselves. And you die because you shut down all the energy in your body. Okay. That's normal respiration. That's normal energy metabolism in our body. Now let's talk about the cancer cell. How does that differ from what I just described in normal respiration? So the cancer cell can survive in cyanide. So if you take cancer cells and put them in a culture dish and you give them cyanide, they don't die. Wow. Otto Warburg said years and years ago, the German scientist from the 1920s, fascinating individual, fascinating story. He said cancer cells are always using this alternative fermentation energy, throwing out all this lactic acid, even in the presence of 100% oxygen. So why do they continue to produce the waste product when oxygen is present in abundance? Because as I said, when we recover from the heart attack and we start breathing, we get rid of this waste product, this lactic acid. But the cancer cell continues to produce lactic acid, even in the presence of 100% oxygen. Even all the oxygen, cancer cell continues with this very inefficient, abnormal energy metabolism. And he speculated, based on the biochemistry, that all cancers, regardless of where they come from, bladder, colon, breast, brain, they all have the same common problem. They continue to produce this waste product, even in the presence of 100% oxygen. And he concluded that there must be something wrong with the mitochondria in these tumor cells, because if the mitochondria were normal, you wouldn't produce this lactic acid waste product. So he concluded that all cancers have a fundamental problem in the way they deal with energy, the way they generate energy. They seem to be locked into a very inefficient energy system, even in the presence of oxygen. And in order for them to continue to grow and spread, they have to have large amounts of this glucose fuel to drive them. So that was the origin of the mitochondrial metabolic theory of cancer, that cancer is basically a disease of the organelle that generates energy. Not the gene mutations in the nucleus, but the defect in this other organelle. The nucleus is one organelle, contains the DNA and regulates all the genes and all this other kind of stuff. But the real origin is some defect in this other organelle that generates energy. It's locked into this fermentation, primitive kind of energy. What Warburg did not know, and what we've discovered, is that there is a second fuel besides the sugar glucose that also replaces oxidative breathing energy, and that's an amino acid called glutamine. It's the most abundant amino acid in our body. And when the person has the heart attack, they throw out the two waste products, which are the lactic acid coming from glucose and the succinic acid coming from glutamine. Now, it wasn't known, all the cardiac guys knew that these two fuels were exploding in the bloodstream, but we also found succinic acid exploding in the cancer cells. But the cancer cells are throwing out the succinic acid because their mitochondria, they can't get energy, so they're using the glutamine as a secondary source to glucose. So the two fuels that are replacing oxidative phosphorylation are driving the dysregulated growth of the tumor cell. So it comes down to how normal cells get energy versus how tumor cells get energy. And the tumor cells, by throwing out these waste products of lactic acid and succinic acid, are telling us in no uncertain terms that we are living and growing in your body on these two fermentable fuels. And if you take those fermentable fuels away from these tumor cells, they will die. So for whatever reason, we've known about this, but the oncology community fails to recognize what I just said. The other thing, of course, is that we can tumor cells being locked into these fermentable fuels, glucose and glutamine, because their mitochondria are incapable of getting energy from sufficient energy from oxygen. Because they can't do that, that means they can't burn ketone bodies or fatty acids also. Cancer cells cannot use fatty acids or ketone bodies to replace glucose and glutamine. So they are locked into these two fuels where the normal, if you and I were to stop eating for several days, we mobilize fats out of our body, goes to the liver. Liver chops up the fatty, like just like you put a big branch in the wood chipper. It chops the big branch into small pieces. So our bodies take fatty acids out of our adipose tissue. It goes to the liver, which is like a chopper, and chops up these long chain fatty acids into these small water soluble ketone bodies, which then replace the glucose that our normal cells would need. So we can lower glucose and transition the whole body over to a fuel that you have to have good mitochondria to burn. So the tumor cells can't do that. So they become marginalized. So we can separate the rest of our normal cells of the body from the tumor cells by transitioning the whole body to fatty acids and ketone bodies, and then simultaneously targeting the two fuels that the tumor cells need to grow. And if we take that, because the rest of the body is protected because they're burning the fatty acids, the tumors can't burn the fatty acids.
So we essentially have to starve that cancer out of the two things it needs.
Yeah. And transition the body over to the fuel the cancer cell can't use.
Okay. So then what have you found is the way to do that?
Okay. So of course, we tested all this in preclinical models of legitimate cancers, not these genetically constructed things. So we have our natural models in mouse that develop spontaneous cancers, just like humans. And then after we tested our hypothesis based on Warburg's central theory, of course, that cancer cells are broken mitochondria and they have to be fermentative. And the field was always confused because they said, oh, we can take glucose away from cancers and they can still grow, but they never targeted the glutamine. So we were the first group to really find that the alternative fuel, this amino acid glutamine, can also work together with the glucose as a powerful synergy. So in order to get the cancer cell, you have to take both fuels away simultaneously and then transition the body. So how do you do that in a person? Well, we've just published a big protocol for the first time for glioblastoma, which is a deadly brain cancer. But we did it. But that, if you read between the lines, we made it so that anybody that really understands can say, geez, can I do this for liver? Can I do it for breast? Can I do it for colon? Can I do it for any other cancer? And the answer is absolutely. We just chose glioblastoma because they have nothing. There's been no advance in managing glioblastoma in almost 100 years. So if we can make a dent on that cancer, all the other cancers will fall into line. So we published that, and the answer is, okay, so what do we do? So when you're first diagnosed with cancer, of course, it's a shock. Everybody's like blown out. Oh my God, I'm going to die. All this kind of stuff. And they're all upset. And so what we do is the first step, we do a complete blood work on the patient. It turns out that many cancer patients not only suffer from the fact that they have a neoplasm, a neoplastic abnormal growth, tumor, if you will, but they often find they have type 2 diabetes, they have obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension. There's like a whole slug of other things, not always, but many people who do have cancer also have a constellation of other comorbidities. So we got to get that person's bloodstream and body back into some state of normalcy. And we know what blood parameter, you go to the doctor, they say, oh, you got this, you're out of triglycerides, a little out of balance, high density lipo, all this kind of stuff. So we try to bring that back into some level of normalcy. And the way we do that is we start them on a zero carbohydrate diet. And that could be vegan, it could be carnivore, it could be pescatarian, it could be Mediterranean, it doesn't make any difference. And we published a ratio of glucose to ketones in the blood called the glucose ketone index. And we published this for cancer patients. But now we realize that a lot of people who don't have cancer want to get a low GKI so they never get cancer. So it's a preventative as well as a therapeutic. But if a person who is eating the great diet, American diet and lifestyle, will have a very high GKI. They'll have a lot of highly processed carbohydrate foods. And you'll look and it's about, the GKI can range anywhere from 45 to 65. In order to manage cancer, you got to get that thing down to 2.0 and below. So how do you do that? So and we used to start, it became too extreme. If you guys ever stopped, do you ever try to stop eating, like just drink water for a few days? Oh my God, it's a butt horrible, horrible. I tried it, man. I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, my friend, he fed we said we're going to go on a water only fast for a few days. And my good friend Mark, he said, I was feeding my dog and I was overcome. I had to leave the room. It was like one of these things.
Eat the dog food.
Yes. So we realized going cold turkey was too extreme for most people. So we realized that if you can just eliminate carbohydrates, if you want to eat a big tomahawk ribeye with a broccoli stick next to it or whatever, or just, chew some leaves or eat a fish, it doesn't make any difference. As long as you don't have carbs. And all of a sudden, after about 10 to 14 days, the glucose ketone index in the person goes down and down and down. And then all of a sudden you see the blood work starting to perk up. All of these parameters start going back in a normal direction. So it's easier to walk down the stairs to get to the first floor than jump off the second floor and get down there in 2 seconds.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Do it a little bit at a time.
Yes, walk down. The body has to adjust to the elimination of carbohydrates in the diet. That could come from anything, from a plant or whatever you're going to eat, and it's culturally and religiously balanced to whatever your culture and religion says you can or cannot eat. You just downgrade it until you reach this zone, and then your body starts to get super healthy. Your body starts to readjust its parameters, and you've given it 10 to 14 days to manage this. And in the meantime, the poor cancer cells, they're looking around. Hey, what happened? Where's my fuel? Where's my sugar? What am I doing? So then they'll start slowly adapting more to the glutamine, which is still in the environment. So we developed the press pulse therapeutic strategy, where we can choke off the glucose by bringing the glucose ketone index down, and then we come in with various non-toxic drugs in a pulsing to restrict the glutamine availability to the tumor. So because the tumor will adapt to the absence of glucose by going towards the glutamine, which is the second fuel driving the dysregulated growth. So, but we can't be too aggressive like we can with we don't need glucose. Our bodies can survive without glucose. We can transition to ketones and fatty acids. So we're not worried about the glucose being harmful in restricting glucose to a person. But glutamine is an extremely important amino acid in our body. It keeps our gut healthy, our urea cycle healthy, and our immune system needs the same fuel that the cancer cell needs. So you can't just restrict that fuel for the whole body, because the very cells that we need to help our healing are going to be damaged as well as the tumor cell. So what we do is we pulse the glutamine. What that means is we use drugs that are used sparingly for a short period of time to kill tumor cells while they're choked from glucose. And then we pull that drug off and let the immune system come in and pick up the dead corpses, the dead tumor cells, because you need you got to get rid of the dead bodies if you're killing tumor cells, who's taking care of the corpses? So our immune system comes in and slowly clears the mess. And then as soon as we allow that happen, we come back and hit those cancer cells again while we're choke holding the glucose. And gradually the body stays healthy and allows the body to clean up the mess gradually while you're targeting these, getting rid of and the rest of the body starts to get much healthier.
What drugs are you talking about? We're not talking chemo.
No, well, let me tell you, the drugs that we have found are 6-deoxynorlucine, which was used on cancer children and adults years ago. It was isolated from a bacteria, and it was kind of an antibiotic that was isolated years and years ago. The problem is they used it and they said, oh, it didn't work too well, and it was a little too toxic, and it was out of patent. You can't make any money on it. So there was all these kinds of things. So the bottom line is we found a way to bring that drug to one of the most powerful chemotherapies that you can possibly imagine, because we got rid of the toxicity. We figured out how to detoxify, keep the therapeutic efficacy, but removing the toxicity by pulsing rather than chronically administering the drug. So once you realize that, then you can bring in chemo, radiation, and you can bring these other things in small doses to kill off any remaining tumor cells with minimal, if any, toxicity to the rest of the body. The problem today is we're going after these cancers like a bull in a china shop. You're doing everything in a wrong context. You're not doing it the right way. Shrink the damn tumor down. Take away the inflammation. Make those tumor cells hanging on for their dear life. They're this close to death. All we have to do now is push a little of the glutamine inhibition. Chemotherapy in extremely low doses will have massively powerful effects when the tumor cells are already near the death, or already close to death anyway.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, Thomas, upwards of 2 million people a year, 1,700 people a day, and about 70 people an hour are dying from cancer. And you mentioned earlier about they haven't even made a dent in glioblastoma in the last 100 years. The research that I've done over the past 3 or 4 years since COVID came out with just health in general, they talk about, we're talking about cancer. They talk about how the surgery, radiation, and chemo are the 3 main things that cancer doctors want to go to, not cardiologists, oncologists.
Yeah.
Tongue-tied today, Randy. Oncologists want to go to. How much of this, Dr. Seyfried, is it about the money? I mean, we hear so much that it's such a profitable disease, and to continue treating it, and it just makes no sense to me that we have a disease that we've been studying for 100+ years, and it seems like it's getting worse, not better. So it just doesn't seem to add up. So talk to us a little bit about that, the mortality rate on a daily, hourly, annual basis, and the money involved, and why is there no ethics, and why is it all about the bottom line?
Well, it's not just about the bottom line, although the bottom line is certainly a major contributor to what you just said in no uncertain terms. What it is the theory that directs the research and directs the treatment. If the National Institutes of Health and National Cancer Institute, if you go to the National Cancer Institute website, NCI, it says that cancer is a genetic disease, that cancer is over 100 different diseases, all caused by different combinations of mutations. This is called the somatic mutation theory of cancer. And science is driven by the theories under which we try to explain the phenomenon. An example of this, to put it into historical context, we can look at many, but one of the clearest examples of this phenomenon is the heliocentric geocentric theory of the movement of the planets. For 1,800 years, based on the work of Aristotle and Ptolemy, it was thought that the Earth was immovable and that planets and the sun all revolved around the Earth. And they would develop these incredibly complicated epicycles, deferents, equants, and it looked like a big ball of thread around the Earth, trying to predict when the planet would move and then twist around and go in a different direction. And the scientist Copernicus from Poland struggled with these calculations for many, many years. And then he said, if we think the Earth might be movable like the other planets, and put the sun in the center of the solar system and have the Earth and the other planets revolve around the sun, everything made sense. The whole it was called the Copernican revolution, and then science exploded after that, astronomy and all these different sciences, only because he shifted the position. Earth became another planet that could move, and it was another planet that revolved around the sun. Right now, we all take that for granted. But for 1,800 years, based on Aristotle and Ptolemy, no. And religious organizations said, oh, no. Earth is the primary, everything revolves. We are the center of the universe, all this kind of stuff. So in coming back to cancer, when you say that cancer is a genetic disease, people are focusing on the mutations in the nucleus of the cell. We and others have shown that those mutations are coming from damage to the oxidative phosphate.
There's 3 types of gases in the body: oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitric oxide. Cardio Miracle is your advanced formula nitric oxide booster and provides you essential support for increased vitamin D3 and blood flow and oxygen, cellular health and reproduction, improved cardiovascular health, enhanced energy and clarity, and it supercharges your sexual stamina. So start reclaiming your health today and increase your energy, stamina, and focus. Go to cardiomiracle.com, enter discount code GRIT. That's cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT. Take advantage of this awesome product and start feeling better today. cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT.
The geocentric, heliocentric theory of the solar system with the somatic mutation theory versus the mitochondrial metabolic theory of cancer. Is that clear? So, yeah, okay. So we're bringing the attention of the disease to the mitochondria rather than to the mutations in the nucleus. So I have gone through the literature and shown that those mutations in the nucleus are not the drivers of dysregulated cell growth. They're an effect of the damage to the mitochondria. So once we realize that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic problem and driven by 2 fermentable fuels and not being able to transition to fatty acids and ketone bodies, the approach to managing cancer becomes very clear. Without toxicity, you can manage this disease. But again, coming back to your question about money and finances, we have built an entire cancer industry around an incorrect theory of what the nature of the problem is. So the incorrect theory has allowed an incredibly wealthy infrastructure to develop around this incorrect theory, which is these very high-priced cancer drugs, radiation, immunotherapy, surgical, all this. Hospitals are generating money. The NIH spends millions of dollars giving out grants to look at gene mutations in cancer when they're largely irrelevant. So the hospitals make money, the pharmaceutical companies make money, everybody's making huge amounts of money, causing with therapies that not only create a lot of physical damage, physical stress, toxicity, but also financial toxicity. This is another tragic consequence of the misunderstanding of what cancer is. These poor folks living today, paycheck to paycheck, working hard every day, get slapped with a $25,000, $35,000 cancer bill. It throws their whole finances into a tiff. Marriages fall apart. People commit suicides. This is just as immoral as what the hell we're doing in the clinic when we have this kind of a situation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally get it. So one thing I wanted to kind of bring to light is it sounds like to me this is a dietary thing. We have a poor food system in the United States, and I'm convinced that what we intake into our body is causing a lot of these cancers. What is your opinion of that?
Well, clearly it's a diet lifestyle issue. It's not just the poor food that we're eating. It's our lack of exercise. It's the kind of stress that our new society puts upon us for a variety of reasons. As I said, when I went to Korea, I met an interesting fellow. Actually, he was Japanese. He said we have a cancer diet and lifestyle in the world of industrial countries, what we call modern kinds of societies. We have very little exercise. We have to go back to our Paleolithic ancestors and how they lived. Don't forget, we're a modern man, but we just didn't appear here 6,000 years ago. We were around during the Paleolithic periods. And we chased down animals, we killed them, and we ate them. So we had a lot of exercise. Yeah. So anyway, we had in our history a lot of exercise. We had natural. Everything was organic. Whether we dug it out of the ground as a tuber or ate it off of a bush or killed the animal, we ate organic foods. They were not processed. They were not full of carbohydrates. We didn't have carbohydrates in our environment, highly processed carbs. The only time we would get something like that would be during seasonal ripeness of fruits and berries and things like that. You could probably get a little bit more sweet from that, but it wasn't constant in our environment. What else did we have? We didn't have as much emotional stress, technology stress, sitting in traffic, being freaked out about all these different kinds of them. The main thing was like, where am I going to get my next meal? When do I have to get off my ass and go out and kill something? We didn't have as much poor sleep as we have today. We're on all kinds of meds and people can't sleep, poor food, no happiness, we're stressed out. All of these things together with the highly processed carbohydrates and the chemicals from our industrialization that enter into the food streams are all impacting negatively on our bodies, causing damage to the mitochondria and leading to the formation of cancer, which is ultimately damaging our energy capacity, forcing the cells into a compensatory fermentation. This is what I said. The origin of cancer is chronic damage to oxidative phosphorylation coupled to a compensatory fermentation caused by all of these different things that I just listed. Yes, poorly nutritious foods. Yes, stress. Yes, poor sleep. No exercise. Put all that together, we have an obesity epidemic, high diabetes, chronic diseases coming out everywhere. As I said to people, the obesity epidemic is evolution in action. Our ancestors, and we know this absolutely because Albert Schweitzer visited tribes of people on the planet that lived according to their traditional ways, and cancer was unheard of. They didn't even know what the hell cancer was. These guys were out working all the time, exercising, eating the natural products of their environment, right? They didn't have cancer. Cancer explodes in populations once the great American diet and lifestyle comes into your existence. And now we have it in China. We have it in all the industrial countries are having this problem. We have an obesity epidemic. The people that are obese today are the descendants of ancestors that were able to survive in the most harsh environmental conditions, storing energy because we needed to store energy. It was ice age. We were tracking animals, man. If we didn't have energy, we would have been eliminated as a species. And our bodies are just storing energy because that's what we evolved to do. And we have an obesity epidemic. So the obesity, which is type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia, you can put the whole package into the same thing. We're living in a totally different kind of environment than what we evolved to. It takes thousands and thousands of years to change the physiology of the body. But our technology has rapidly increased over the last 100 years. It's completely rapidly. We have our food industry now. We have, food grown in Venezuela. It comes to our shops. It looks perfectly like we grew it out in the backyard. It's a world distribution of food. A lot of these foods are poorly nutritious. They're and the chemicals in there that are used to kill the insects, genetically modified foods. I mean, all this comes together, and then you wonder why you have obesity and cancer, dementia, cardiovascular. It's not a mystery. It's perfectly explainable based on evolutionary biology.
So when I was researching this stuff and looking about, you talking about the energy and the fermentation, I got to thinking about, okay, somebody's got a cluster of cancer. And it one day it's this size, and then a week later it's throughout their whole body. My first connection was that this stuff was rapidly spreading because it had lots of fuel.
Well, you're half correct.
Okay.
It has lots of fuel. That's absolutely correct. Now here's the situation. Bear with me as I try to explain this one. All right, brace yourselves. Are you braced?
I'm braced.
Okay, took me 15 years to figure this one out. We had a mouse that had developed a spontaneous tumor in the brain, and when I took the cells out of the brain of the mouse, because you can't really do too much, the brain of the mouse is tiny, but if you grow it in the flank of the mouse, you can get enough tissue to do our biochemical studies. And when we grew it in the flank of the mouse, all of a sudden, the cancer spread like everywhere in this mouse. It came back to the brain. It was in the lungs, the liver. I said, what the hell happened here? because I studied cancer for decades. And every time you put the tumors into the flank of the mouse, they stay there. They form a great big mass on the side of the mouse, but they never spread anywhere. So I said, why is this cancer that I put in the mouse spread like everywhere? It's like exploded all over the place, just like a human metastatic cancer, just like you said.
Yeah.
Oh, how did it spread all over the place? So I had no idea at first. And then for 10 years, I had a couple of students. We dug deep into this. And when we grow cells in culture, we can easily add a salt solution and they come off the dish. They free themselves, they detach easily, and then you can separate them and you get a whole little pellet of cancer cells in a tube. You can put them in a centrifuge and spin them down. And this tumor that spread all over the mouse's body, grown in the culture dish, we couldn't get, they stuck. They were like glue. It was like, what the hell? So one of my students, because you put some salt in there, you bang the dish a couple of times, and all the cells kind of just trinkle and fall off into the tube. And my student's out there banging, and all of a sudden she breaks the whole flask with the tumor cells in there. She's banging, thinking they were going to come off. They were like stuck like glue. I'm on the phone with my good friend Herb Yo, who worked with me at Yale, and he was up at Dartmouth. And I said, Herb, we can't get the damn cells off the bottom of the dish. He says to me, sounds like macrophages to me. So the macrophage is part of our immune system. It's like the Marine Corps. It could be your best friend or your worst enemy. These are the cells that when you have bacterial infections, they'll come in and kill the bacteria. They heal wounds. They do all kinds of things, and they circulate in our bloodstream like the military. You get a wound, they come flying out of the bloodstream, kill the bacteria, facilitate wound healing. So we finally realized that the metastatic cancer cell had these macrophage characteristics. I did all the molecular biology, card-carrying macrophage. So I said, wow, this is unbelievable. Then we went into the human literature and we looked at lung cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, brain cancer. Every one of the major human metastatic cancers have these same markers as the macrophage. So I said, God damn. I said, you kidding me? I mean, these metastatic cancers, so they come into the tumor and they'll fuse with those other cells and become these damn hybrids, and they explode out of the tumor and spread all through your body. Yeah. So the first thing, as a biologist, what do they eat? You got to go back and look at what. So these guys from Oxford, England, the Newscombs, have studied the food intake of macrophages their whole life. Like all they did was, what do macrophages eat? Turns out they love glutamine. So I said, what happens if we target the glutamine? Bang, we got rid of the metastatic cancer. It's like slaughtering them, no matter what organ they went to, you could slaughter them. So you take away the fuel, you can take away the fuel for the glucose, and now you know what your adversary is. Once you know what your adversary eats, you can starve it. And if you don't know what your adversary is, you have no clue. You're giving these poor cancer patients Infamil, you give them high sugar or make them feel good. This is nuts. You got to know the biology of your adversary. And once you understand the biology of what you're dealing with, then you understand how to kill it. So that's unbelievable, right?
Well, Darren, I bet MD Anderson is using this exact protocol.
They probably are. I would not doubt that.
Not anytime. Not today.
Well, speaking of that, you started out the show about you talking about the students that came to your class and what they'd been told by previous teachers or professors or in textbooks. Does big pharma just have such a stranglehold on this whole movement that there's really no hope in the future? Because I know from some of the research I've done with you prior to this show, you said it's projected to get much worse by 2050 instead of getting much better. And as much money as we're throwing into this, donations, the breast cancer fund runs and the marathons and the donations to the Cancer Society, it seems to me like all these millions and billions of dollars that are being poured in there, we would come to an end point at some point and say, okay, we've found the cure, we found the prevention, let's get this thing wrapped up. But it seems like it's almost getting worse.
Yeah, well, that's because of the theory. The theory says that it's a genetic disease, and you have built massive infrastructure and you've built massive industries around an incorrect theory. So when the National Cancer Institute says it's a genetic disease, and you're giving grants, millions of dollars of our taxpayer money to give grants to people studying something that's not relevant to the nature of the problem, you're not going to move the needle. And everybody's backslapping and happy with the amount of money we can charge for these damn cancer drugs. And most of them are not targeting the fuels that are keeping the damn cells alive. They're doing peripheral things. So you look at the whole thing. Okay, many scientists, Nobel Prize guys, and all that sophisticated guys with the ties and the white shirts and the top Dana-Farber's, MD Anderson's, Sloan Kettering's all over. They think that they know they don't know. And a lot of them don't. And if you ask oncologists, did you hear that cancer can't live without glucose? Never heard of it. I know if it was important, I would have heard about it in the medical school. You don't hear
they're
about
not
that.
teaching it in medical school.
No. So they're not getting, and then they get angry when the cancer patient comes in and says, I'd like metabolic therapy. Can you target my glucose and glutamine? I said, get the hell out. What the hell are you talking about?
No, that's not going to work.
Okay. So you see it's at so many levels, and the hospitals generate massive revenue on buying big parcels of chemo drugs at discount, charging the insurance companies. Radiation therapy, chemotherapy, all these are big blockbuster revenue generators. The pharmaceutical companies are making them. The National Cancer Institute says it's that. All the guys doing genetic research think it's that. And then you tell them it's not that. What kind of response you think you're going to get? I must be crazy.
No. I'd heard you mention something about treating the glutamine and using parasitic drugs.
Yeah.
So just kind of give us a quick nutshell on the parasitic drugs. And when you said that, the first thing I thought of is ivermectin and fenbendazole. Is that maybe what you're referring to, or is there something else?
No, that and others. Okay, so why would I say that?
You tell me.
Okay, I do a deep dive on this, right? It's not like I pull this stuff out of my butt.
No.
Yeah, right? No, right? So, I think I should use ivermectin. Why? I don't know. I just thought it would be
Well, you
good.
read a few books, I think.
Yeah. So listen, there's a story behind this. And there were some guys that had tumor cells growing in rats. I think it was in Kansas, actually. It might have been out there in one of the medical schools. The damn rats or mice, at that time, I think it was rats, they got some sort of a parasitic infection. They were growing tumors in these rats. And the animal care committee said, you got to get rid of the parasites. We can use some fenbendazole. It's a kind of an anti-parasitic drug. So they get rid of the parasites, but the tumor cells went away. So the tumor shrunk and disappeared at the same time. So they said, what's going on with that? Or were they scratching their head? Oh, geez, I don't know what happened. So I started to look into this a little bit more. Now, here's the situation. We have discovered that cancer cells rely on inside the mitochondria, as I told you. And I'm sorry, I have to get a little deeper into the science to try to explain this to people, because that organelle that I said generates tremendous energy efficiency from oxygen also has a second, very minor way to get energy through another form of, it's called substrate level phosphorylation. It doesn't involve oxygen, but it's a very tiny amount of energy. And then I realized that the parasites, that many different strains of parasites use that same pathway to get energy. When the parasites reproduce to make more parasites, they use oxygen. Like I said, they breathe and they get energy. But when they dissipate into your tissues and take up residence, regardless of what kind of parasite it is, they start to go back to this fermentation mechanism to get energy through this glutamine pathway. So I said, damn, are these parasites using, the cancer cells are using the same pathway that the damn parasites are using? Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Yeah. Well, that's because it was politicized. When you start politicizing stuff and you lose the contact with science, then everything gets jarbled and completely screwed up. So it's not just ivermectin. You can use embendazole, fenbendazole. There's a whole cocktail of different kinds of parasite medications that could all be effective. And what they're doing they're targeting both glucose and glutamine, but they're not as powerful as Dawn, the other drug that I was telling you about. Now, of course, what I'm saying to you, because we have evidence, we have papers under review, and we'll put one out saying that M-bendazole, which is like fenbendazole, they're very similar structures. Yeah, it's targeting glutamine metabolism. So the cancer cell is using glutamine, and it was a parasite was using the same pathway as the tumor cell. So obviously it works on the cancer cell because it's targeting what the parasite kills parasites and cancer. But it's not as powerful as lowering glucose, putting a patient into GKI. And then we also use parasite medications along with DON. Don't forget, the biggest problem, I would say a large problem that I have and what we're talking about is we're talking about managing a very difficult disease on the cheap without toxicity. Are you telling me that we can replace all of these super expensive toxic drugs and immunotherapies and all this kind of stuff with what I'm telling you? And the answer is yes. But that does not necessarily mean I don't want to sound like I'm getting rid of all the great standards of care, the great radiations and the poisonous chemicals and the immunotherapies and all that stuff. Those all have their place. They have a place in the eventual management of the disease, but the place they're in now is not the right place. They are like when you go to the dentist, they're part of the cleaning. If you have a few surviving tumor cells, you come in with these other little bit of radiation here, a little immunotherapy there, tiny amount of chemo there, and you can eliminate, after you pare down this giant angry population of cells to a few stragglers, you can then come in with these other therapies and polish them off. But what we're doing today is we're coming in with these therapies at the beginning, oftentimes making the problem even worse than it was when you started. And that's the reason why we have 1,700 people a day dying in this country, 8,100 a day dying in China. We have all of the tools in the toolbox to manage cancer effectively, non-toxically. We're just not knowing how to use the tools correctly. And when you challenge the system and say it's not a genetic disease and you can do all this stuff, there's a massive resistance, confirmation bias. You're threatening my entire career of distinguished work that I've gotten millions of dollars from. You can't be right. Well, we got 1,700 people dying to say you guys aren't right either. So,
exactly. Yeah.
So it really comes down to pride and profits overall.
Exactly. Yes.
Are you passionate about the groundbreaking and heroic research of Dr. Thomas Seyfried on metabolic therapy and cancer? So are we. That's why we've created something special for you, in collaboration with Johnny Rockermeyer, a German book publisher and translator. Introducing our collection of meticulously crafted books that distill the essence of Dr. Seyfried's work. Dive into the science and discoveries. These summary books are your gateway to understanding the intricate world of metabolic ketogenic therapy in a clear, concise, and engaging way. Whether you're new to the subject or a seasoned enthusiast, our books offer insights that can change your life. Ready to explore this transformative knowledge? Visit our website at www.cancerasametabolicdisease.com to get your copy. You can buy the ebook there directly and the paperbook via the provided links. Here's the best part. A portion of every purchase goes directly to support Dr. Thomas Seyfried's groundbreaking research. That's why the direct ebook purchase is the best option to donate as much as possible. You can see all of the donations Mr. Rockermeyer has already made at www.ketoforcancer.net. That's right, when you buy our books, you're not just...
Yes.
I just don't see how some of these people sleep at night knowing that the research is out there.
They don't know. And that's the problem. You go down to the oncology clinic, never heard what I just told you guys, these guys never heard of it. So how can you get angry or how can you feel bad about something you have no clue about?
Exactly.
Now,
yeah.
So it's just human nature, man. It's just you've invested enormous amount of energy, time, Nobel Prizes, all this kind of stuff into an approach that's not correct, based on an incorrect theory. This is what happened with the epicycles and the movement of the planets. It got more and more complicated. It looked like a ball of string. Everybody was trying to figure out until you changed the position of the Earth and the sun. Everything made sense. Same thing will happen with cancer once the field comes to realize that it's a mitochondrial metabolic disease. And then they're going to say, why the hell didn't we know this all the time? I'm telling you, for Christ's sake. I've been telling you for the last 30 years.
The way I see it is they're going to figure it out and they're going to go, oh, but what are we going to do about this? We're not going to make any money off of this.
Well, there's always an entrepreneur out there that will figure out how to. I'm not against that. I'm not. I don't care about the money. I just care about how long we can keep people alive that
Right.
we're given terminal diagnosis. That's my reward. But there's other guys. I'm not against those guys. If they can figure out how to make a lot of money on the stuff that we're doing and that the future will be, and I'm sure there will be. It's just that that's not my sphere. I can't work within that. I don't know.
So have you worked with, I'm sure you've got some success stories. You've had people that have went on this protocol and they've, either became cancer free or at least controlled it.
Yeah. We have, well, our really tragic, just happened last summer on a Labor Day. Our good friend and Pablo Kelly from England, had a glioblastoma diagnosed 2014. A young man. He was kind of iconoclast in a way. I don't like traditional medicine. My whole family was all holistic and all this kind of stuff. So he said the doctors told him if he didn't, over in England, he was in the NHS, the healthcare, Devon, England, Pablo Kelly. He had a glioblastoma. We published this paper in Frontiers in Nutrition. We had a lot of our friends take the tissue, and we definitely confirmed that it was a glioblastoma. He had an IDH1 mutation, which actually makes it grow slower. But he said no radiation, no chemo. Well, Pablo, you're going to be dead in 9 months to 12 months if you don't do standard of care, radiation and chemo. He didn't even want surgery. He said no surgery, no radiation, no chemo. And he said I'm going to a glioblastoma. He said I'm going to go for it because he wanted to have children, and he said if I have to get radiation, I have to put my sperm in a bank or something, or I can't remember what all this stuff was. But anyway, so I said to Pablo, and this was early we didn't really know about the glutamine. We didn't know a lot about this stuff. It was 2014. We're still working on the details. And Pablo said, well, I want to do your metabolic therapy. And I said, well, you got to get your GKI real low. And I said, you got to take your blood sugar with the meter every day, your ketones with the meter, and all this kind of stuff. So he started doing that. And the tumor started to not grow, but it was there. So it grew very, very slowly. And then after 2.5 years on MRI only, he had a biopsy and it said glioblastoma. And so I wanted to make sure that it was a glioblastoma because the pathologist from England said it was a glioblastoma, but that's only one. So then I brought it to my colleagues at Thomas Jefferson Medical School in Philadelphia to take the same tissue sample and let their pathologist diagnose what he had. And they said glioblastoma. And then I had my good friend Joe Maroon. He's the team surgeon for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who is a member of the Neurosurgical Society of America. And he had his pathologist at the University of Pittsburgh do the pathology on this thing. All three, the English, Thomas Jefferson, and UPitt, all said glioblastoma based on pathology. So I said, well, okay. So, but glioblastoma will kill you real quick if you don't do anything, right? So he went on, he rejected radiation, he rejected chemo, he rejected all the stuff, just did metabolic stuff, keeping his blood sugar low. He was eating a diet very low in carbohydrates, all this kind of stuff. And then the tumor grew slow. And then he had it debulked. So we said, okay, go let the surgeon take it out. So he goes in and the surgeon now debulks, they call it debulking, which is the extraction of the tumor from the brain. And then they, about a month or two later, they said, oh, we got it all. Because a lot of times in GBM, they say we got 98% of it. We didn't get it all, all this kind of stuff. But they said, oh, we got it all. So Pablo goes back in his normal ways of high carbohydrate diets. And then he goes in about 6 months later, we see the damn tumor back again. So anyway, put the fear of God back into him. And then he's back on his low carbohydrate diet. And you could see the tumor stop growing. You could see it no longer advancing. It started to get stabilized. So it was stabilized for another 3 years. And then it grew slowly. And then he had a second debulking surgery to reduce the tumor down. But now he knew that even though they say he knew that it could come back. And definitely it did come back. And it came back slow. And then he had a third debunk. Now, here's the funny thing. They told Pablo at the beginning when it was first diagnosed, you have an inoperable glioblastoma. Inoperable. Now we had it operated on 3 times. So, which is nuts. Like, I have an inoperable tumor that you operated on 3 times. So during the Labor Day break, which was last August, I was sitting here on a YouTube with Pablo, and I said, Pablo, how do you feel? I feel great. He says, we're thinking about having them go in and get the last residual mass left. Now he's out. This is 2024. He was diagnosed in 2014, and now here it's 2020. It's 10 years. 10 years with a glioblastoma. Now he says, I said, of all the surgeries that you've had, and we were laughing about his inoperable tumor being operated on 3 times, and got married, he's had 2 kids, his wife is pregnant, all this stuff that he's had that he would have never had he done standard of care, because you're going to die from the radiation and the chemo. So, and we were joking. So I said to Pablo, of all these things you've had, is there any, you're walking, you have exercise, you have a relatively calm lifestyle, the kids are there. He says, the only thing I can't feel when I push my thumb and forefinger together, I can't feel them together. I know they're moving, but I can't. I said, they mean you tell me of all this surgery, that's the only thing? I'm walking, I'm talking. He has a seizures occasionally. That's true. He had a couple of seizures. Every now and then he had a seizure. So we were laughing. And my doctor, Thomas Duryea, MD, Ph.D., was on my team here as a clinical scientist with me. We were talking to him, just like you guys were talking. So we get a call 5 days later. Pablo decided to go to surgery to get the last residual piece of tumor removed. And we have a picture of Pablo coming out of he has all the bandages on his head. He's got all the tubes coming out of him. He's got his thumbs up, I did good. So his wife comes down, they're talking, he's doing really well. That night, he dies from a massive cerebral hemorrhage as the result of the surgical procedure. He did not die from the tumor. He died as a consequence of the surgical procedure. A massive surgery. So how long could Pablo have lived had he not decided on that surgical procedure? The answer is we don't know. All we know is that he chose a different path to manage his glioblastoma, very different than what the standard of care would be. And I published a paper showing that when you cut out the tumor real quick and then irradiate and do chemo, temozolomide, you create a great wound in the brain. And then to reduce the swelling, you give high-dose steroids, which make your blood sugar go through the roof. So in normal standard of care, you create an environment that facilitates the availability of glucose and glutamine to the tumor. And that's why we haven't made any advance in 100 years, because every surgical treatment of glioblastoma in every major medical school on the planet does the same damn thing. Surgery immediately. Sometimes you have to do, not always, immediately radiation and chemo and all this other stuff. And you free up the 2 fuels driving the return of the beast. And I told them that over and over again. And they continue to irradiate people with brain tumors. And I'm telling you, even though I published all this information, give the mechanism of action, all this stuff, they ignore it. And that's one of the reasons we haven't made any advances in 100 years. And listen, we have a problem in science. My friend Greg Glassman, who used to own CrossFit, he was the head of CrossFit. He now has the Broken Science Initiative. He runs that. And we look at lack of reproducibility in science publication, in cancer, in the top scientific journals, Nature, Cell, Science, all these different journals, about how one study can't reproduce the other study, and it's like back and forth. Nobody knows what's going on. But when you look at the survival curves for people with glioblastoma, it is unbelievably consistent from one hospital to the next all over the world. To survive more than 70 or 2 years, 2.5 years is rare. To survive 4 years is more rare. And to survive 5 years is like, 3 or 4%. And to survive 10 years is almost zero. All right. And every major medical school on the planet shows the exact reproducibility. And I'm saying, how could so many studies be so incredibly reproducible? Because they're all doing the same thing that they're all doing, and they're not getting any different results. Pablo chose a different path. Pablo showed that if you go a different way, you can possibly live far, far longer than you could possibly imagine. But then they say, oh, he's a fluke, an N of one. Oh, we can't do that. I said, man, if I had a drug from a pharmaceutical company that took a GBM patient and showed that he could live 10 years, are you kidding me? They'd be all over that drug, everybody in the world. But because he chose a diet lifestyle change, nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
That's amazing. Well, Dr. Seyfried, you have written a book, I believe, Cancer and Metabolic Disease, correct?
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that, where people can get that, and then let us know about your website, foundationformetaboliccancer.com.
Yeah, well, the foundation, it's Travis Christofferson's foundation. Most of my money, most of my support for our research comes from private foundations and philanthropy. Travis Christofferson's Foundation for Cancer Metabolic Therapies is a 503 foundation. He supports our research here at Boston College. I cannot accept personally money from anyone. It has to either go through the university, or it has to go through private. Some people have their own private foundations and they support us, or Travis Christofferson's foundation. I've written only one book, that book. I know there are other books on the web saying that I wrote them. I did not. Unfortunately, there are some folks that try to take advantage of what we do. But the book you showed was my only book. I'm sorry. I apologize for the cost. I had no choice in deciding the cost of that book. It was John Wiley and Sons that chose that price. And I know it's people like, oh, I want to buy a book for 15 or 20 bucks. This is like $110, $30 or something. Yeah. Well, no, I know. I didn't set the price. They're blaming me. They're blaming me. I'm sorry. I apologize, man.
No.
Hey. So anyway, that book was the foundation. And then from the studies in this book, we started to do peer-reviewed studies based on the platform of this book. And that's why we developed the Press Pulse Therapeutic Strategy and all this new science that is coming out, supporting the science as to what I'm saying. The science is the truth. You must do it again and do it again and do it again and reproduce it. Because if you do that, like we and others are doing, that's the solution. That's the future of cancer management. It will be metabolic therapy. I just don't know how long it's going to take for the field to adjust economically, prospectively. It's going to take some major readjustments in how we do that. But if you want to keep people alive longer with a higher quality of life, this will be ultimately the way to go.
So my last question is, where do people find this protocol? You know, how would they implement this protocol that you have? You know, if I got cancer today, I'd want to do that, but I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, well, what I've done is give people kits of information for free.
Okay.
They email me. I said, all I asked them, I says, if the kit helps you and you feel better, make a donation to Travis Christofferson's foundation.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't, but the idea is, I think when people get something free, they think it mustn't have any use.
Yeah, they don't put any value on it. That's why it's so important to charge something, even if it's a small amount.
I can't do that. I can't charge anybody for anything. People want to make money. Give me money. They got to go Travis. I can't accept it. Or they give it to the university, and the university then filters it through to me. But personally, I cannot. If someone handed me $100,000 check, I give it to Travis. Travis then filters it through my university back into our research program. So that's the way we keep our program going. It's philanthropy and private foundations that support my big team next door that are working on the preclinical, clinical translation of this whole thing. And you're right, at the beginning, you were given millions and millions of dollars for breast cancer, running, jumping, and all this stuff. And then you say, where's all that money going? Yeah. The more money we give to breast cancer, the more people dying from breast cancer. How you explain this? Nobody ever asks for the accountability. Where's all that money going? How come there's no accountability?
And so many people think that all these marathons and the Susan Komen Foundation, they're all so noble. And it just makes you wonder, are they all about the money? Is it just all about the finances?
All about the finances. And then when you find out where does the money go, okay, we do give, they say, oh, we have research here. Look at what we're doing. They're looking at gene mutations. They're hunting for gene mutations. and it's not a genetic disease. Right. It's a metabolic disease. So you might as well take the money and put it in the toilet and flush it down. It's not going to help. Even the moonshot projects that were started by Barack Obama and then Biden as the vice president, Biden as the president. The moonshot was $100 million put into immunotherapies. Immunotherapies are based on the somatic mutation theory of cancer, not on the mitochondrial metabolic theory of cancer. So a lot of that moonshot money might as well send it to the moon. Most of it's not going to do anything. Yes, there will be some success. I'm not denying. We do have success. About 20% of people that get immunotherapies get long-term survivability. About 60% doesn't do anything relative, and 20% are actually killed faster than the tumor. Wow. It's called hyperprogressive disease. Nobody likes to talk about that. But the drug companies do not hide this information. If you listen to the drug companies at night, Keytruda, Opdivo, they spend more time telling you how the drug is going to kill you than how it's going to help you.
They do.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
They're not lying.
I've never seen so many drug commercials that I've seen in the last 3 to 4 years. And I go over to my mom's and she'll have basketball on or sports. And I look at her, I'm like, I just cannot believe the number of pharmaceutical commercials. And then they talk about, the side effects may be This is crazy. It's insanity. And yet people are lined up the next day to go to their doctor to get those prescriptions. It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, but they're not lying. They can't say, the drug companies are lying to us. They're not.
No.
They're telling you exactly this drug will kill you.
Well, Dr. Seyfried, we want to thank you for coming on here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Randy, I learned more here in about an hour and 10 minutes than I've learned probably in all of college. What about you?
Oh, I never learned any of this in college, but I tell you, this is good down in the dirt information. I would hope that people are paying more attention to what you said because you're giving us, the scientific terms and the process. So it sounds like to me there's a little bit of hope.
Well, I hope people value this because, like you said, he's not making money off of this. He didn't set the price of his own book. He's not in this for the money. He's in this for the truth and the knowledge and to give people hope and a future and a healthier life. So I just want to commend you, sir, for being so noble and bold and taking on such an awesome career for 40-plus years. It's amazing.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'd like to have you come back on in the future if you can, and if you're willing to come on and talk about some more updates and just some progress you've continually made.
Yeah. Well, we've done that now. Getting back to what you said earlier was we just put a big paper in with over 30 authors on a protocol treatment for glioblastoma that can be used for almost all cancers. If you were to take this to any MD, they could say, I can do that. But the problem is the system does not allow them to do that. And that's one of the tragedies. So how will the system change? It will come from the people. The people must be angry. The people must demand metabolic therapy. And when enough people demand it, you will get it. But it's not going to come from the top. It's got to come from the bottom.
Right. There it is. The words of the people again, Randy.
We
hear that in all these podcasts, no matter what the topic. So, Dr. Seyfried, thanks so much for being on here, my friend. Hope you have a great 2025 and just keep doing awesome research and sharing truth.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
See ya.